Okay, okay, great. So what we're gonna do today is we're gonna do operations with scientific notation. This is our standard eighth grade expressions and equation number 4, and our learning objective is that you will be able to add, subtract, multiply, and divide using scientific notations. Before I start going over those operations, I want you to tell you guys that on your calculator, to find the base of 10, what you're gonna use is you're gonna use the EE button. Okay, when you calculate, you might find it like E or either capital or lowercase double E. You're gonna use that button. So you're gonna type in, for instance, if you wanted to do that expression, you're gonna find the E. So you're gonna do 8.45 E13. That means times 10 to the 13th power. Okay, so we're gonna start with multiplying and dividing with scientific notation, and we have to use the properties of exponents that we did on 2.1. Okay, so just recalling the property of products. Right, so we have a to the n power times a to the n power. Remember, same base, I keep the same base and I add the exponents. So that's what I'm going to be using with my powers of 10. And then if we have the quotient property, if we have the same base, we're going to keep the same base and we subtract the exponents, n minus m. Okay, so let's start with this one first. So in this one, I have 3 times 10 to the 6th power, and then times 2 times 10 to the 3rd power. Now in this one, I can use associative property of multiplication, which tells me that I can regroup the numbers. So if I regroup them, I'm going to regroup these two together. So I'm going to say 3 times 2, and then I'm going to group this ones together. And then 10 to the 6th power times 10 to the 3rd power. Okay, so if I regroup that, then I have 6 times, and then if I use the product property of exponents right here, I have the same base. I'm going to write the same base, and I'm going to add the exponents. So 6 plus 3 is 9. Okay, so this will be my final answer. We have to check that this is in scientific notation. Remember, scientific notation, the first factor has to be between 1 and 9.9, and then times 10 to whatever power, right? So that one works, so that one's done. Now let's look at this one. I'm going to regroup it. I'm going to do the associative property of multiplication. So 8 times 4 times, I'm going to regroup this ones together. 10 to the 3rd power times 10 to the 7th power. So 4 times 8 is 32, and then I'm going to keep the same base as this one tells me, as this property tells me, and I'm going to add the exponent, so that will be 10. Now, I have to go back over here. Does this meet the requirements? No, really, because 32 is over 9.9, so I have to change that, okay? Now, how would I change that? Well, the point is right here. This one point is right here. I have to move it to the left one time. So I'm going to end up with 3.2. So 3.2 times 10. But because I divided this one by 10 basically, right? I move it one place value to the left. I made it smaller. I have to increase this one, okay? So then it's going to be to the 11th power, okay? So let me just go over that. If you move your decimal to the left, your exponent is going to go up however many times you move this one, right? If you move it to the right, that means you made it bigger. Your exponent is going to go down because you're taking, basically you're balancing it where you are, if this basically you're multiplying by 10 right here, so you have to divide by 10, so we're taking one power out, okay? So that's what we have to do for this one's right here. Now with division is the same thing. Now with division, we're going to use this property right here, okay? So then this one I can rewrite as 4.2 over 2.1, right? And then times 10 to the 2nd over 10 to the 3rd. So I'm going to divide these two first. So 4.2 divided by 2.1 gives me 2. Okay, and you guys can do the long division. I just know that because 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 2 divided by 1 is same thing, 2, so it's 2. And then times, now same base, yes, so I'm going to keep the same base, and I'm going to subtract exponents. So it's going to be 2 minus 3. Okay, so in this case, I end up with 2 times 10 to the negative first. Now in this one, I'm going to use my property of negative exponents, right? Where if I have a negative power, I bring it down to make it positive, okay? So in this case, I'm going to end up with 2 times 1 over 10 to the 1st power. So if I use that, I'm going to erase this. So if I use that, I can multiply those two fractions. Remember, I put a 1 under it. So 2 times 1 is 2. And then 1 times 10 is 10. So which brings it to 1 over 5 if I simplify. Okay. So the answer for this one, you guys, is 1 over 5. Okay. So let me give you two problems for multiplication and division, and then we'll go over addition and subtraction. So take a last look. Okay. Okay, so for homework, 10 times 10 to the 5th times 0.2 times, actually, let me change that. So for number 1, let's do 7 times 10 to the 5th times 3 times 10 to the 8th. Remember, it has to be written in scientific notation. And for number 2, let's do 16.4 times 10 to the 7 over 4 times 10 to the 8th. Okay, so make sure that you do those two problems, and I'm going to give you two more, one for addition, one for subtraction at the end of the video. Okay, so with adding and subtracting with scientific notation, it's a little bit different. Okay, so we're gonna use two methods. So the first method that we're gonna teach you for this one, okay, is we're gonna write all the numbers with the same power. Okay, so we're gonna write numbers with the same power. That means that the exponent has to be the same. Okay, so for instance, we have 3.1 times 10 to the 8th power, and then plus 3.38 times 10 to the 7th, right? Well, these two have different powers, so I have to change that. Okay, so I'm gonna change that, and let me add one more right here. So since I have two 8s, I'm going to keep those, and I'm going to have to change this one right here. So I'm going to just rewrite this one. So I'm going to say 3.1 times 10 to the 8th. Okay, that's one number. And then I'm adding, and I'm going to add this one right here. Okay, now this one, you guys, I have to bring this one up, right? So that's going to be like this to the 8th power, right? So basically, I'm multiplying by 10. I'm adding an extra base of 10 right there, 10 power, right? That means that, so same thing with what we did with multiplication. If I bring, in this case, because I'm bringing my exponent up, that means this one has to go to the left once, okay? Because I have to take away that 10 power that I added right here. So then this one, I have to move it to the left one time, and I'm gonna end up with this number right here, okay? And then this one is gonna be the same. The hardest part is this right here, when you have to change it to the same power. Just remembering that if you're bringing your power up, you have to move that many places your decimal to the left. If you're bringing it down, you have to move it to the right. So you're balancing that, okay? Now I can add all of those together, and I'm going to keep the same power, okay? So then I'm going to add the multiplier. So that's my second step. So I'm going to say add multipliers. Okay, so I'm going to add 3.1 plus 0.338, so 338,000, 10 thousandths, and then, thousands, and then plus 1.1. Okay, so that's going to give me 4.538. Okay, so 4 and 538 thousandths. Okay, and so I already added my multipliers, and I'm going to write in scientific notation. So I'm going to take this 4.538 times 10, and because they're all the same and I'm adding, I don't have to add any of those, so it's going to be to the same power, okay? Because I'm adding apples, apples, and apples, I'm going to get apples, right? So this, I just have to check that this number is between 1 and 9.9. So this one works, okay? So just remembering, if the power Okay, if you're raising the power, you're gonna move it, you're gonna move your decimal place to the left, however many times you move this one up. If you are decreasing your power, then you have to move your decimal place to the right, however many times you increase that, okay? So that's the first method. Let's go over the second method. Some of you might prefer the second method. I just think it's a little bit more work, but whatever works for you, that's what you do. First method, we usually use our toolbox, right? We use our tricks. Second method is you're gonna write all the numbers in standard notation. Okay, so let me bring the same ones again. So I'm gonna say 3.1 times 10 to the 8th plus 3.38 times 10 to the 7th, and then plus 1.1 times 10 to the 8th. Okay, so I'm gonna write those in scientific notation. So I'm sorry, in standard notation. So I'm moving my decimal a place to the left, to the right. So I'm gonna say 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, this one I'm moving it 7 places to the right. So I'm gonna add 5 zeros because I'm moving 1, 2 places, and I 5 more. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'm gonna have 8, 3, 3. Okay, I started from the right, so to make sure that I have the same, the place values are correct. And then this one, I have to move it 8 times to the right. So because I already moved it once, I need 7 more zeros. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 1, 1. And I'm gonna add all those together. 8, 3, 4, 4. Okay. Sorry, this is a 5. 3, 4, 5. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. Okay. So this is the number that I end up with, but that is not written in scientific notation. So then, so my second step was to add them, right? And then my third step is to rewrite a scientific notation. I'm gonna do SM for scientific notation. So then I'm gonna move my decimal. My decimal is right here, so I'm gonna move until I get it to a number between 1 and 9.9. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 right there, right? So 8 places. So then I'm gonna end up with 4.538 times 10 to the 8th power. Okay. This one takes longer, but it's whatever you prefer. Okay, so let me give you some problems to work with for your homework, and then also use this, you guys, make sure you write that in your notes and you remember. Anytime they ask you for speed, it's basically distance over time. Okay, and it's also good for physics, so make sure that you know that. Okay, so for instance, if they say I went 600 miles and I did that in 8 hours. Okay, what was the speed? Then you're gonna divide that distance over time, and that's gonna give me my speed, right? So then I'll do 600 divided by 8. Por 7.56. So then I can say that my distance was 75 miles per hour, right? Okay, so let me give you 2 more problems for your homework. So that's going to be number 3 and number 4. And you guys, with addition and subtraction, is the same thing that we did for addition. So make sure that you just follow those steps, okay? Okay, guys, so the subtraction one is the same thing that we did for addition. I'm going to do the first method first, and then we'll do the second one. Remember, this have to be in the same power, okay? So I'm going to do 4.3 times 10. If I want to keep the one to the third power, then I can keep it there. And if I want to change this to the third power, that means I'm going to bring this up. So I'm going to move decimal to the left. So then it's going to end up at 0.3 times 10 to the third power, right? So then I'm going to subtract this 3. So I'm going to do 4.3 minus 0.3. I'm going to end up with 4 times 10 to the third power because we already have the same power, okay? The other way to do it with the same method is if I want to bring this one down, okay? So if I want to bring this one down, so let me rewrite it with a different color. So I want to keep it at the second power. Then I'm just going to write this one the same, right? And then this one, I'm bringing this one down. That means that I'm going to move this one to the right. I'm making it bigger, right? So it's going to be 43 times 10 to the second. So then I'm going to say 43 minus 3 gives me 40 times 10 to the second power. But again, this is no scientific notation. So that means I have to move my decimal 1 to the left. So that means I'm going to bring this one up one, right? So then I end up with 4.0 times 10 to the third power, which is the same thing. Okay, and the second method that we went over is if I change this to standard notation. So it's going to be 1, 2, 3 decimal places, and then this one is going to be 30. Sorry. So 3, and then I'm going to say 1, 2. So I end up with 4,000. And if I change that to scientific notation, it's going to be 4.0 times 10 to the third power. Okay. So let's do 1.3 times 10 to the 7th plus 4.7 times 10 to the 6th. Okay, so remember, first thing is you're going to work with those powers. And then let's do a subtraction problem. Let's do 5.8 times 10 to the 9th. And then minus, you're going to do the same thing right there as well, okay, with your powers. Minus, let's do 4.2 times 10 to the 7. Okay, so let's work with those two problems. So you have 4 problems to do. Remember, Math is Magic when you're amazing.